What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality Podcast. I'm your host. I am Caitlin Kenna-Smith, and this is week 7 of 8 of your Sustainable Fat Loss Journey series. So today, I'm going to set the tone for the final episode, which will be next week, and I'll get to that topic at the end. But first, the biggest thing that I want to focus on in today's episode is why are you here? Because so many people get into this groove where they lose weight, they're happy, they're successful, but then they gain it all back. And sometimes they gain it all back and then some extra, and they find themselves stuck in this cycle, stuck in this loop. And it's something that I've seen so many times throughout my career in the fitness and the health space, where I've had clients come to me who have said, well, I've been trying to lose the same 10 pounds for the past 5 years, or even more common, those people have been trying to lose this, those people have been losing the same 10 pounds for the past 5 years. So they lose the 10 pounds, they're happy, they're hype, and then they gain it all back, and then they lose it again, and then they gain it all back, and then they lose it again. But what they find is that every single time that they try to lose the same 10 pounds, it becomes more and more difficult to lose that weight. And the reality is, guys, it's not really that difficult to lose weight. Simple, not easy, right? The challenge that most people face, and the reason why you're probably here, is because you're really fucking good at losing weight, but you suck at keeping it off. Most people can drop their calories and move a lot more for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. Now, if they're consistent or not, that's another story, in order to get to a specific number on a scale. But if you can't keep off the weight, it doesn't even matter. You're basically working for nothing, because then you just become more and more frustrated. And that frustration eventually leads to you saying, well, fuck it. I guess I'm not meant to be healthier, or I'm not meant to look better in my eyes, so I guess I'll just settle for this. Which, settling in life, that's something you should never do, because you get one life. You should never, ever settle if you're not 100% happy or fulfilled. Now, this whole series has been focused on teaching you how to start and how to maintain your sustainable fat loss journey. And again, sustainable being the biggest key here. But like I said, in this episode, I'm going to touch on why is this a problem in the first place. Now, when I thought about this, a few different things kind of came into my mind. Number one being unsustainable approaches, which is an obvious one, right? There's a lot of just misinformation, or a lot of people just make assumptions. Like, for example, they will assume that carbohydrates are bad and they cause fat gain, when that is not necessarily the problem. But they hear it so often on different news articles or social media platforms, or they just have this negative assumption in their head when it comes to that specific food group of carbs. Because when they think of carbs, they don't think of fruit and vegetables and rice and potatoes. Usually they think of pasta and breads and cookies and all of these things that are very easy to overconsume, thus lead to a calorie surplus, thus could lead to weight gain. But anything could lead to weight gain if it puts you in a calorie surplus. All right, so a lot of people, misinformation, making assumptions. You don't know what you don't know is kind of what that first one goes off of. The second one, and all of these kind of stem off of that first one, is lack of discipline. And usually, like I said, it stems from the first one, because people develop poor habits because of the misinformation, because of making assumptions. And these poor habits that you've built over time, it's not very easy to just change your habits. It takes time and it takes effort. And a lot of people just don't put in enough consistent effort to change the habits, because they don't look at it as something that's a lifestyle. They look at it, again, as something that, okay, I'm going to do this for a short period of time. I'm going to lose the weight, and then whatever, fuck it, I'll figure it out when I get there. The only problem is that they don't figure it out when they get there. So discipline is a skill that you must build, and you have to continue to practice in order to keep it. It's kind of like your sustainable weight loss journey. If you want to lose weight, you have to be able to do the things to make it happen. But once you get to that goal weight, you can't just stop doing the things, because if you stop doing the things, then you're going to gain all the weight back, right? Same thing with discipline. If you continue to practice discipline and you continue to do hard things, that's how you build discipline, whether that be working out, sticking to your nutrition when you're tempted to do something that doesn't necessarily align with your goals, keeping the commitments and promises that you make to yourself no matter how you feel. Like, your mind has to be stronger than your feelings and emotions. And getting intentionally uncomfortable. That's how you build discipline. And if you continue to practice those habits and build discipline, you have discipline. And it's not easier for you to do something. However, it takes a lot less willpower and drive to be able to do something, because it is just ingrained in who you are, and you have more integrity for yourself. And when you make a promise or you make a commitment to yourself, you have the discipline or the experience to say, I'm going to continue to do those things, even if I don't feel like doing them, because I know the result is worth it. If you don't practice discipline, you could have it once and then lose it. Like riding a bike. If you don't ride a bike for 10 years, it doesn't matter really. You probably can't ride a bike really well anymore. Now, the cool thing is that once you build it, you can get it back more quickly if you lose it. However, you should just never lose it. But we go through periods of time in life, so shit's going to happen. And you have to be able to accept that and work through it. Now, the third thing is poor expectations, or focusing on the wrong things. And again, goes back to number one, misinformation, making assumptions. Most people just overcomplicate this. You overcomplicate things, or you constantly question if what you're doing is right, and you think you have to be losing 2 to 3 pounds a week, when in all reality, it's better to lose half a pound to a pound a week. Maybe closer to 2 if you have hundreds of pounds to lose. But the reality is, the amount of people I've worked with who are like, I only lost half a pound this week. And I'm like, you fucking lost half a pound. That's awesome. Think about it like this. If you were to lose 1 pound a week for 52 weeks, which is a year, you would lose 52 pounds. And I bet, because you lost it in a sustainable fashion, that you would actually keep the 52 pounds off, versus somebody who said, I'm going to lose 52 pounds as fast as possible, and I don't care what I have to do to get there. I don't care if my health suffers. I don't care if I have to starve myself and just move all of the time. That person might lose 52 pounds in like 4 months. However, I bet 4 months later, they gained it all back, and probably then some, because of the damage that they've done to their metabolism in the process. And that's kind of what I want to touch on today, the metabolism. Now, the metabolism is a really fucking complex thing, and as humans, we just don't know enough about it. So for somebody to say absolutes and say, I have a terrible metabolism and my metabolism is broken, that is unbelievably naive, because we just don't have the research to prove that these things actually exist. But what we do know is that it all comes back to muscle. Muscle is the organ of longevity. It is the driver of the metabolism. And it really is, in my eyes, the true secret to sustainable fat loss. If you want to make fat loss easier, you want to make it more sustainable, you need to build muscle. And you can't build muscle off of starving yourself and doing excessive amounts of cardio. It just doesn't happen. That's not how it works. Now, I've mentioned this a few times over the course of this series, and if you follow me on Instagram, or if I'm your coach, or if you've just had interaction with me, you probably have heard me say it to the point of nauseam, because people need to hear this. I want to paint you guys a little bit of a picture and a visual on what happens when you do take a sustainable approach, when you're eating as little as possible, moving as much as possible, working out with an intent to chase a calorie burn. And there's a word that I see thrown around all over social media, especially over the last couple of years. So I want to address that word, and that's metabolic adaptation. Now, before I get into this, I want you to remember that the only way to lose weight or to lose body fat is to be in a calorie deficit. You want to lose weight, be in a calorie deficit. You want to lose body fat and maintain as much muscle as possible, be in a calorie deficit, weight train, or resistance train, and eat enough protein, which is about 1 gram per pound of your goal body weight. Now, I also want to preference that it's not as simple as calories in versus calories out. So many people want to oversimplify the process. You either oversimplify or you overcomplicate. Nobody wants to meet in the middle. There are so many factors that impact the equation of calories in versus calories out. For example, if somebody has malabsorption issues where they're not properly absorbing the food that they're eating because they have some horrible gut issues. So they're eating all of this food and not all of the calories and energy and nutrients from the food is being absorbed. So they're probably not going to gain weight, but they're eating so much that technically they would be in a calorie surplus, right? However, again, they're not absorbing it, so the calories inside of the equation is going to change because their body isn't absorbing the calories properly from the food that they're eating. So again, not as simple as calories in versus calories out, but it's a great place to start. But it also leads to a lot of people chasing that unsustainable approach to fat loss, where they think, okay, calories in versus calories out, so then I'll just eat as little as possible and I'll move as much as possible and I'll lose weight as fast as possible. But why doesn't that work if it's calories in versus calories out? It will work to an extent. However, it's not sustainable, so eventually that person cannot maintain the low calories and the amount of movement. So they start slowly moving less because they're exhausted. They start, eating a little bit more bites, licks, sips. They're a little bit less strict with their nutrition, usually is what it looks like. And then all of a sudden they kick themselves out of that calorie deficit because they're going through this restrict binge cycle, or they lose so much muscle mass in the process of dropping calories so dramatically that now their metabolism has slowed down because muscle burns more calories. So now you're burning less calories because you have less muscle. And I'm going to go into all of that, but before I do, one more thing I want to kind of set the tone for. You have to really be honest with yourself along the process. One of the biggest reasons why I see people fail or struggle on their fitness journey is because they're just not honest with themselves. If you're on a fat loss journey, are you tracking your food? If you are tracking your food, are you tracking it correctly? You're using a food scale. You're actually tracking it the right way, ounces or grams, depending on whatever you want to use in your app. If you are tracking it correctly, are you tracking absolutely everything that you're eating? The bites, the licks, the sips, everything. The coffee creamer, the pretzels that you snuck out of the cabinet, the tablespoon of peanut butter that you had right before you went to bed. Are you tracking everything? Because a lot of times when somebody stalls or they start gaining weight back, it's simply because they slipped. Something slipped. Maybe you're moving a little bit less because you're working more at a desk. You're not moving as much throughout the day for whatever reason. You're allowing yourself to be a little bit too flexible with the nutrition. Your sleep is absolute shit, which usually leads to excessive hunger or cravings, which leads to the nutrition slipping. Maybe your workout intention or effort has changed. Maybe you're talking a little bit more at the gym or scrolling on your phone a little bit more, or, not pushing the weight the way that you used to. You really have to be honest with yourself, because personal responsibility is the absolute only way to move forward in any area of your life, but especially with a health or wellness goal. But let's get into what I was talking about initially. I want to paint the picture for you of what happens when you take that unsustainable approach and why it doesn't work. When you're chasing the calorie burn, when you're eating as little as possible, when you're moving as much as possible to try to get a specific number on a scale. The word metabolic adaptation is a buzzword that is used in the fitness industry, but a lot of people don't even know what it actually is. They hear it and they get a little bit scared, like, oh no, maybe my metabolism has adapted. Hold up, let's talk about it. So metabolic adaptation is a super normal thing that is supposed to happen when you go into any sort of a dieting phase. All right, your metabolism adapts to what you're giving it. All right, so metabolic adaptation is when your body becomes more efficient at using energy, thus burning fewer calories in the process, to give yourself more energy to carry out vital functions. So basically, it's a normal response to effectively change as it moves away from homeostasis. So when you start a diet, you're moving away from that comfort zone, that homeostasis, because you're dropping calories a little bit, your body composition's changing a little bit, your body's like, what are we doing? But basically, as your body changes with dieting, your metabolism changes as well. So your basal metabolic rate, which is the amount of calories that you would burn if you were just lay on a table and stare at the ceiling all damn day long, just to keep you alive, that will drop as you lose weight because a smaller body burns fewer calories. This also applies to the calories that you burn during exercise because a smaller person will burn fewer calories during exercise. They're moving less mass. The thermic effect of food, which is the calories that you burn, simply digesting and breaking down the food that you're eating, is going to drop slightly. This one doesn't impact it as much, but it's going to drop. It's something to recognize. Since you're eating less food, if you're used to taking in 2,000 calories, now you're taking in 1,500 calories, your body doesn't have to work as hard or burn as much energy to break down the 1,500 than it would the 2,000. Your calories burned via NEAT will also drop. So NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or the amount of calories that we burn simply moving around throughout our day. This is outside of exercise. So if you're fidgeting, if you're walking more, if you're, taking the stairs, if you're parking further away in the parking lot, things like that. So when you're dieting, you're depriving the body of energy, which is just calories. You're depriving the body of calories, which is what you're supposed to do. You're more lethargic, which could result in less daily movement. Your step goals might go down, so you're taking less movement throughout the day. Now, if you do have a step goal, like if you say, hey, I'm going to always aim for 10,000 steps a day, great. Then your step goal isn't going to go down if you're always hitting that. But a decrease in calorie burn here usually happens just because we don't notice it as much. For example, somebody who's fidgeting usually, maybe if they're a little bit more tired because they don't have as much energy, they're not fidgeting as much, and that can add up throughout the day. But then going back into it, your body is getting smaller as you diet down and burns fewer calories as it shrinks. Thus, your metabolism will burn less calories, which is inevitable. Now, to look at it from another perspective, to keep it as simple as possible, like I said before, weight loss or fat loss comes down to calories in is less than calories out. It will result in weight loss. If you add protein and resistance training, thus building and maintaining muscle to the process, you will lose more fat. Now, metabolic adaptation simply just causes the calories outside of the equation to decrease, meaning you're burning less calories. Thus, what was once a calorie deficit no longer is. Okay? And all of these things are normal. It's your body just literally working in the way that it's supposed to. Your body doesn't understand that diets are temporary, so things like, oh, we're going to be here for a while, so I might as well start conserving energy. So it perceives the deficit as a forever thing, not just a today thing, because your body wants to protect itself. You were literally put on this earth, and not a lot of people are going to like this, but you were put on this earth to survive, to thrive, and to procreate. Not to walk around on a beach with a six-pack. So your body doesn't necessarily give a shit about your aesthetic or performance goals. It wants you to survive and thrive. Literally. You need to survive. That's what we care about. And when those things don't happen, that's when you should start being concerned. Like, for example, if you are eating 1,200 calories a day, but you're struggling to eat more because you're super full or you aren't hungry and you feel like shit all the time, that's really not normal. Right? You shouldn't feel like shit all the time. Of course, you're going to have highs and lows in life. That's just part of it. But if you're always super low on energy, you got brain fog, you can't focus, you're not hungry at all, it's really difficult for you to eat more, that's an issue. So if you're not losing weight on like 1,200 calories a day and you're a female, that's a problem. 1,600 calories as a male, that's a problem. And it probably means that your body has adapted in some way to make your maintenance lower because of the excessive stress that you've put on it through always fucking dieting or always fucking doing too much cardio and not taking time to actually build up your metabolism and build up muscle. So if that were to happen, if you are a female who's eating 1,200 calories right now, like actually eating 1,200 calories, you track everything the right way, you track everything that you eat, and you know for a fact you're eating like 1,200 calories, but you're not seeing results, like the scale isn't moving, you feel like you're not, seeing any sort of results, you kind of feel like shit. What are you going to do? You're going to drop your calories down to 700 calories so that way you can lose more weight? That's not going to happen. That's not sustainable. The solution is to periodize your nutrition. So think of it like this. An athlete, say an NFL player, they have different seasons that they go through. They're not always in the season, right? They're in season, then they're post-season, they have off-season, they have pre-season. You can't always be dieting. You have to implement refeeds, you have to implement diet breaks, you have to reverse diet in order to restore your metabolism, to build up your metabolism, slowly increasing the amount of muscle that you have. That's really what it comes down to again. The reality is that most of you are far too stressed or have been dieting for far too long or far too often to be in a good position to actually lose body fat and keep it off. And this is especially true, like I said, if you're somebody who has been doing extreme dieting all the time or has lost a ton of weight multiple times again and again and again, because again, it all comes back to muscle. If you're constantly in a calorie deficit, if you're constantly pursuing a diet or you're constantly trying to lose weight, you're probably not taking enough time to actually build muscle, to build up your metabolism, to make fat loss easier. So what needs to happen in this situation, or what I have done with myself, but also as a coach, and I've seen it be super successful for my clients, is to take time to improve your metabolism so that you can put yourself in a better position to actually lose body fat. So think about it like this. Eating 2,200 calories and losing weight sounds a lot more sustainable than eating 1,200 calories and barely seeing results. One's sustainable, one is not. One, you could go on vacation for a weekend and maybe eat like an asshole and be okay. The other one, you eat like an asshole and everything just kind of sticks to you. The absolute biggest thing that I want you guys to take away from this is that if you are somebody who's constantly dieting, constantly eating low calories, constantly trying to burn as many calories as possible and struggling to maintain or even see results, something needs to change. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And you need to give your body an opportunity to get away from the stressful calorie restriction, slowly increase the amount of food that you're eating, focusing on protein, focusing on whole foods, doing it the right way, and focusing on building muscle. It will absolutely pay off in the long run. But so many people are too afraid to take the plunge, or they start freaking out 2 weeks in and then they just add in more cardio and less food. So next week, what I'm going to get into is I'm going to go over reverse dieting, what I've done with my clients and myself to help us build up our metabolism and see better results. And not just better results, but more sustainable results, where this becomes a lifestyle. We all know that person. I'm sure you know that person who's always just on their fitness shit. And you're like, how do they do it? This is how they do it. Some of them are addicted and they need help. But I didn't want to throw too much information at you all at once. And I figured that this is a good place to stop for the week to set the tone for next week. So digest this information, and I want you to really ask yourself some honest questions. And if you are the person who is constantly dieting, constantly eating low calories, chasing the calorie burn, you're working out a ton, and you're struggling to maintain or even see results, I want you to shoot me a DM on Instagram saying no BS so I know where you're coming from. And I will try to help you because each individual is going to be different. And I know that I have the solution to your problem. So this is week 7. Next week, week 8 is the final week. We're going to talk all about reverse dieting, and I'm going to have a special thing for you. But until then, guys, go out and do one thing that's going to take you one step closer to where you want to be.